Hello and welcome to the NFL Preview Show powered by Oddschecker. Finally, the threesome is united.
Yes.
Tom, Julian, Ben McClymont, Coach Jeff Reinebold. Jeff, I know you've been here for the last couple of weeks, but it is a pleasure to sit down with you. For me, personally, it's been a long time.
Yeah, it has been a long time. You know, it's amazing what fatherhood can do.
It makes you very, very tired. That's what it does. Yeah, I've been away having a baby. Well, not physically.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I've lost all the weight.
Didn't your wife have something to do with it?
Yeah, she was pretty instrumental in it. But that means that for the last couple of weeks I've had to be away from the NFL Preview Show. But Ben, you've been holding the fort.
Been riding solo. A few of my own tips have been going out. You're welcome for those. And me and Jeff have been doing a couple of little videos. But it's good to have Tom back as well. Now we've got like the olden days.
Yeah.
The three of us chatting.
Except we haven't got any wine. We need to work on the wine situation.
Get that straightened out.
So, Jeff, you've been over now for a couple of weeks. Is that right? You came over before Thanksgiving. Feel good to be back?
Feels great to be back. You know, it's amazing. Every time you come over here, it's a reaffirmation of just how knowledgeable the fan base is here, how interested, how passionate they are about the game. Bucky Brooks is over now from NFL Network. Bucks was a player in the league and a scout in the league, and we were talking on the way back from the game in the car. He was surprised about, you know, just the level of fan interest and the passion and knowledge of the fans over here.
Yeah, well, that's it. And we're trying to bring Ben, we're trying to supplement that knowledge. A couple of decent odds. Hopefully everyone can make a little bit of money, right?
Hopefully.
That's the plan. So the biggest talking point, I think, this week, Jeff, and we'll get straight into it with you as a coach. Mike McCarthy, coach of the Green Bay Packers, no more. He got fired after their 2017 loss to the Arizona Cardinals. The right time?
Well, I think when you evaluate it, there's two ways to look at it. Number one, from a coach's standpoint, you say, how can a guy who's won over 60% of his games, who's taken a team and won a Super Bowl, and has been competitive in every season, whether his quarterback was with him or not with him, hurt, injuries, the bad defense, all the things they've been through in Green Bay, how can he not have the opportunity to finish the season? Because everybody knows the Packers now are out of the playoffs with it, but the decency to let him finish the season. I think from an organizational standpoint, obviously there was clamor for change, and this also does put him as the lead dog now in the sweepstakes that is going to happen when they start looking at potential head coaches.
Yeah, definitely. We said nine playoffs in 13 years. He probably should have lasted the season. But do you think it was his time? Is his maybe scheming slightly outdated?
Well, I think that's what everybody talks about now, is the simplicity of the offense and that they haven't evolved. They've never gone to the level that we see now with all the motion and you know all the RPOs and all of the stuff that's come into the game in the last 5 or 6 years. But I think what's to be real honest with you, I think there's a general sense out there that everybody's looking for the next Shawn Mcveigh. And what people have to understand is Shawn McVay is a huge outlier. Yeah. I mean, he is so rare, and he's been so well prepared because his grandfather was, you know, a general manager in the NFL. He grew up around the game. He just has a background that very, very, very few people possess. Plus the fact he's incredibly intelligent and, you know, all the other positive factors that he brings to the table. He's a rare guy. I don't think you're going to find, and I know this is what all the owners want right now, but it's going to be very difficult to find that guy.
Yeah, do you think like Shanahan coming in and Matt Nagy, both two really young coaches who've almost, well, Shanahan not quite yet, but they seem to be turning their franchise around. So everyone is looking for that guy, aren't they? Even if it's not McVay, I think that there might be someone else.
Well, that's like, again, and it's typical of the league because, you know, there's that old saying of offense sells tickets, defense wins championships. Well, now offense not only sells tickets, but you have to be able to score if you're going to win a championship. So I think there's going to be a number of guys. John DeFilippo is one guy. You know, Josh McDaniels obviously will get another chance real soon. I think there's some other guys looming out there, but it's a limited pool. It's a small pool. So for this, now the Packers jump ahead in the sweepstakes. Whether they may think about going into college for a guy, it'll be interesting to see.
Well, the Packers, not mathematically out of the playoffs just yet, Jeff. They're 4-7-1 record, and you can get them at 500-1 to still win the Super Bowl.
Wouldn't touch it.
Not a pound.
Not even with your money.
That's fair enough, because I don't have any. It's all gone on nappies. Let me tell you that. Ben, do you think that Mike McCarthy, he gets another job in the NFL?
I think he's looking favourite for the Browns. If you look at what the Browns need, they probably need a rebuild, need someone to come in who's done it before. Maybe look for that young offensive guy, but I think they're more looking for someone solid to kind of start again. They've got some good pieces there, a good young quarterback, so maybe he goes in there and starts afresh.
Yeah, well, he has got a Super Bowl under his belt, 3 NFC Championship losses as well, and like you said, a number of playoff appearances.
You know what's interesting about what you're talking about, Ben? If you trace the roots, right, it all goes back to a guy by the name of Ron Wolf, who was the general manager of the Packers, and John Dorsey comes from that Ron Wolf school, so there's a Packer vein in this whole deal. So that would add some credence to what you're talking about.
What about Aaron Rodgers and player power now, Jeff? Obviously, Rodgers is in the twilight of his career, but he's still vastly superior to many other quarterbacks, still can lead a team to a championship. How much is he going to affect the new hire?
Well, you know, there was an awful lot made of that and how his relationship with Mike had gotten strained over time, and that, you know, you talk to guys that played there and have been with him. He has an awful lot, much like Peyton Manning did at this point in his career. He has an awful lot of say in terms of what they do and how they do it. And so, again, whoever gets that job is going to have to be able to coexist with Aaron Rodgers. The reality of the situation as you look at it is when you go back to when they won that Super Bowl, and, you know, James Jones and Donald Driver and, you know, all the great players that they had weapons. Well, slowly but surely, those weapons have kind of just fallen off in Green Bay, and they haven't been able to replace those guys. Jermichael Finley was the tight end at that time, and, you know, they had a ton of good players. Now it's all become dependent upon Aaron Rodgers, and, you know, defensively they've never been, you know, a top 5 team. So I think there's a lot of work to be done in Green Bay.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time in transition for the Packers. Now, let's move on to someone else, Ben, who doesn't have a job anymore. Kareem Hunt, cut by the Kansas City Chiefs after video emerged of Hunt punching and kicking a woman in a hotel in Cleveland, believed to be back in February. There's further allegations about Hunt as well, so the Chiefs have said, no, thank you. Good decision, obviously, by the Chiefs, but how does this affect them on the field?
Yeah, I think that's the number one thing. It is a very good decision. It's the right thing to do, especially in the climate with a few other players around the league as well. Yeah. But he's a big player for them. He's top 5 in the rushing yards. He had loads of touchdowns. He offers stuff at the back, a lot of runs at the backfield as well. Now they're on Spencer Ware, and I think they've pulled off
Shakandrick West
from come back.
Yeah, from free agency. So they're really fishing around for some players now, and that's a big hole that's left them.
I guess West knows the offense because he's been in Kansas City before, Jeff, so he's familiar with the system. But that's quite a drop-off, isn't it, if we're talking about quality alone?
Well, I think we're going to really find out now about how much this system, how much of it's the system and how much of it is the players. Because one of the things that's prevalent in the NFL right now is everybody says, well, we need to run the Chiefs offense. We need to run the Rams offense. Well, is it the offense or is it the players in the offense? And I think if Spencer Ware steps in there and he can fill the hole, much like James Conner did when Le'Veon Bell was hurt, I think that, or Le'Veon Bell decided not to play, I think that that'll tell an awful lot about whether it's system or whether it's players.
It's a massive job, isn't it? And I kind of feel a bit sorry for head coach Andy Reid because I feel like he never quite gets to the ball.
He's waited for this when it's all come together, all the pieces are there, and then
this is a dream ticket for him, and yet Kareem Hunt is very much threatening to derail that.
Well, you know, again, it's whether a guy makes a mistake off the field, and he certainly made a mistake off the field, and I think he magnified that mistake when he lied to his own organization. They asked him numerous times about the incident, and he continued to say that it didn't happen, and then TMZ comes up with film of the thing, and so now there's no more. No. You can't deny it any longer. So I think that he got put in a really he put the Chiefs in a really difficult situation where their hands were tied. You know, and they also, you know, Tyreek Hill has a history of this kind of stuff going all the way back to his days in college, and they took a major gamble on Tyreek, and so they're very sensitive to these kinds of issues.
It's interesting, Ben. Not totally surprising, but in years gone by, Hunt may have not gone right the way through waivers. He hasn't been claimed so far. That kind of shows you the mood right now in the NFL. It's going to be a big one for the Chiefs. They've got to prove themselves. They entertain the Ravens this weekend. Do you think they've got enough to do it?
Yeah, easy. I think the Chiefs are going to win.
You don't think they drop off at all?
You think it'll be easy?
I don't think it'll be easy. I think they're going to win though. I can't see them losing to the Ravens. I think it's too early for Lamar Jackson in his development. Yeah. I think he's going to have to stand. He's going to have to throw the ball. He looks really good running. He's got a couple of 100 yards each week. I think he's going to need to blow the top off like 300 yards.
The Chiefs are 6-1 still to win the Super Bowl, 9-4 to win the AFC as well. So the odds makers still fancy the Chiefs to make it.
Like the Ravens though this week.
I think the Chiefs are going to win, but I think it's going to be a close game.
I do too. You know, I tell you what, Wink Martindale and that defense in Baltimore are extremely good. You know, that was a high-flying Falcon offense that they held to 150 yards, lowest total all year by a long shot. So don't underestimate that Raven defense.
It'll be an interesting one between the Raven quarterback. It's not quite a battle between Jackson and Flacco, but there does seem to be some underlying, not necessarily confusion, but maybe some tension.
Well, I think there's no question about that. I think when we saw earlier in the year when they tried to play the two of them at the same time, you know, there's a lot of ways to make your statement, and sometimes you can make your statement without saying a single word. And when Joe Flacco went out there and lined up at wide receiver in that stance and didn't even move when the play was called, that's very, very, I mean, that's an awful lot being said right there to the coaches in Baltimore.
Looked like Andrew Luck when he lined up at wide receiver. Do you see him at wide receiver?
Yeah.
Took a high pass and
Yeah, they better not. But they finally found a way to protect him. He's not getting splattered every time he goes back to pass, and now they're throwing hospital balls out there too.
So maybe it's best if you are a quarterback going out, just pretend you're not really, it's not happening.
Keep
safe.
Keep safe, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about Week 13 before we get into the Week 14 games then, Ben. Which ones took your eye? Which ones?
Me and Jeff last week talked a lot about the Steelers-Chargers. We thought that would be a big matchup, and it proved to be. The Chargers ousted the Steelers, 23-7 up at half-time the Steelers were. The Chargers turned it back. Phillip Rivers had a big game, 299 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Keenan Allen had 14 receptions for 148.
Jeff, how do you feel about the Chargers? They seem to be a team always that are kind of under the radar, but now they're making a real charge.
I think I've underrated them. I really have, because you go into that game and they're down by 16 on the road in Pittsburgh, and that should be a game, set, match deal right there. And they find a way to come back. They return a punt, long punt for a touchdown. You know, Phillip Rivers is just going to keep throwing until there's no more, no more bullets in the gun. But I you know what? On the other side of it, I look at it and go, Pittsburgh, are you kidding me? I mean, you've let now Baltimore back in the divisional race. You have a chance to make a statement at home. You're up by 16 at halftime, and you can't close. I think it scares me as much about the Steelers as anything else. And I'm going to say this. They are an underperforming football team for all of the talent that they have. And I'm not, I guess I am being critical of Mike Tomlin, but you got all those first rounders on defense. You got all those weapons on offense. And you have a chance to win a game, a statement game in your own park. And you can't finish after being up 16, that's not good.
This is exactly what I was going to say to you, Ben. In the Steelers are quality. They're quality beyond their means, and yet there's no consistency there.
No.
You know, we're not. The Steelers should be dominating in the AFC, right? They're such.
Well, that's
a
what
good
they did
team.
first half. They looked great first half. Antonio Brown, who has been quiet for a few weeks, had a big half. Smith-Schuster's always having big halves, and James Conner banged in a couple of touchdowns. It looked like it was done. And 23-7 up at half-time. The Steelers are 174-0-1 when up that much at half-time at home.
Wow.
That's quite a stat. So they've never done that before. They've never thrown a lead like that at home.
My goodness,
and
that is a good stat.
Thank you. It's obviously not mine, but...
You went through every game. Very committed to it. What other games took your fancy this week? Obviously the early game, the Cowboys and the Saints. Cowboys throwing a little bit of a spanner in the works there. For New Orleans and their pursuit of the NFC. The Cowboys are a bit of a wild card as well themselves.
I think the Cowboys are better than people think they are, particularly on defense.
Yeah.
And you know, they challenge. I think what they may have provided for the rest of the league is a blueprint rather on how you can get after New Orleans. You've got to play man to man. You've got to challenge those receivers outside. If you play zone, Breeze will cut you to ribbons. But if you play man and you force those receivers to beat you one-on-one, because again, let's look at the number of touchdowns he's thrown to guys that weren't drafted players, guys that couldn't even, you'd have to have the program to know who the guy is. Well, there's a reason for that. Usually he's not quite good enough. And so, I think that's going to be the thing that you're going to see people start to do, and the Cowboys did it and did it extremely well.
Yeah, do you think if you take away Michael Thomas, like you're saying, Breeze makes these guys look good, but can they get open against one-on-one receivers if you take Michael Thomas out of the game?
Okay, so let's say you just want to bring 5. You're going to bring 5-man pressure, which I think you need to, because you got to pressure Breeze.
Yeah.
Well, you still can roll the safety over the top of Michael Thomas. Now, who else is going to beat you one-on-one enough times to win a football game? And that's what they're going to have to come up with, that person. Maybe it's Kamara against the linebacker, some kind of way. But people are going to now see what Dallas did, which is exactly that. Roll the safety over Michael Thomas, bang Michael Thomas every down, and then make somebody else win one-on-one battles.
Yeah. It makes it very, very interesting, Ben, in the NFC East. Cowboys now atop the East, but it's very close with the Eagles, and those two play each other this weekend, so that's an exciting one. Cowboys 25-1 to win the Super Bowl. Still an outside shot. Do you fancy them at all?
No, not yet. I think Prescott looks a lot better with Amari Cooper. He's definitely made a difference, and people like Cole Beasley now getting more open as well, because obviously 2-1 on Cole Beasley was not helping anyone. So I think we were talking a lot about Leighton Van Der Esch last week, and he had another big game, didn't he? So I think they're still a year off. Like Prescott's a year off. Elliott looks fantastic. Leighton Van Der Esch building. If they get Leighton Van Der Esch and Sean Lee in a team at the same time, that would be good to see.
Yeah, and my question always with the Cowboys is Dak good enough to win the game from the pocket if he has to throw it 50 times to do it? Now, he was 24 or 28 in that game the other day, but a lot of it was screens, check downs, those types of throws. My question would be, and the reason I would say you got to prove it to me yet down the stretch, is outdoors in bad weather, can you drop back and win? Because again, people are going to do the same thing to them. They're going to push the safety over Amari Cooper, and they're going to say, okay, Cole Beasley one-on-one, that's the best you got. We'll take our chances there.
Yeah, I think Michael Gallup is turning into a bit of a player as well. He was 5 for 76 in this game. He's someone who can blow the top off, which they definitely have not had in a long time.
And that would really help him, Benny, if he can establish himself as a player.
Tight end, they're struggling now.
I think they're going to win the division. I think they got an open road to the division, particularly if they can beat the Eagles this weekend.
That's it. This one is massive. So let's turn our attention to Week 14 then, gentlemen. It is getting very close to playoff time. Ben, we're in December now, so these games really matter.
They mean something now.
As if Week 3 doesn't mean anything, because if you lose that one, it just doesn't count. All right, so let's look at the first game on Sky. It's the Baltimore Ravens at the Kansas City Chiefs, 6 p.m. Sky Sports action. Jeff, you'll be in the studio. You'll be watching this game attentively. What are you looking out for from both sides?
Well, I think this one's a really interesting matchup because Don Martindale's defense in Baltimore is outstanding. And they took a Falcons offense, which has been very good all year, and just held them almost in check. I mean, under 150 yards total offense, and they won a game that they shouldn't have won, frankly, based upon what their offensive production was. I just think that the Chiefs are certainly as good or better than the Falcons are on offense, but I think it's going to be a real close game. This Lamar Jackson kid, he's exciting, and I'm going to tell you something, his teammates believe in him, and so I think the Chiefs will win, but I think it's going to be a close win.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson carried the ball 54 times for 265 yards and 2 touchdowns in his 3 starts, Ben, so far. For a quarterback, is that sustainable, or is he playing with fire a little bit?
I think it's sustainable when he slides, but he doesn't like to slide.
No.
He likes to go head first, so he's quite a slight frame. If you're going to go head first trying to knock people over, that's when he might come into
here's a guy that in college, he played 3 years of college football, started 38 games, I think it was, scored 50 rushing touchdowns as a college quarterback, and threw for another 60-some, but it's like you say, Benny, it's a whole different level of cat that's hitting you when you're dealing with these NFL guys.
Well, the Ravens are currently, they still have an opportunity, right, to win the AFC North. They're just a game behind Pittsburgh. And Ben, do you fancy the Ravens to leapfrog the Steelers with what we've seen so far?
No, I think this game will set them back, and then I think if the Steelers are at the Raiders, I think if they go win that and they're 2 games ahead, I think that would be enough for them. The Ravens this game 14-5, big outsiders on the road. But like Jeff said, maybe a close game. Chiefs won to 13 points. The winning points margin that's 7-5. That might happen. They could stick close to the Chiefs.
Yeah, the Chiefs are 4-11 straight up, and Jeff, they haven't lost a game at home this year, 5-0. So they take the game back to Arrowhead, and you've got to fancy the Chiefs.
Well, I think when you look at that's another big factor in this thing. You know, the Ravens are going to have to go on the road. Arrowhead's a hard place to play any time of year, but it's particularly hard to play in December when we get to this kind of weather. And you know, the Chiefs have an awful lot to play for, fellas. They've got to win this game. It's not a must-win game like if you don't win, you're out of the playoffs, but it's certainly a game that you're talking about seeding. This is a huge, huge game. I think those are the reasons I would go with Chiefs in this match.
The points line here, Ben, 53 points. What do you fancy? Because I kind of think it's going to go over, but I'm looking around, and we were talking off camera, and you guys are thinking a bit more conservative.
I was thinking over, but I think Jeff made some good points about the Ravens' defense, and it's getting tense now. Winter football.
Look at it is
53 points.
Exactly, and you look at what happened last week. I mean, there was not a better around. This is why there's so many nice big hotels in Las Vegas, but there wasn't a better around that would have said that the Jaguars and the Colts was going to be a 6-0 game.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going back to, Mike Curtis with the Colts when and Johnny Unitas was wearing high top black shoes at 6-0. You got to be kidding me.
Saints held to 10 points as well. Like, these teams are starting to get
Falcons 16 or 12 or whatever it was. Yeah. I mean, that's what happens as you get into this time of year.
Let's go under.
If you fancy a close game, you can have the Baltimore Ravens plus 5.5 at 11-10. I quite like that because I think the Chiefs are going to win, but I could see it being quite a tight, cagey affair. Other side of that, Chiefs halftime and Chiefs full time is 8-11. So if you fancy the Chiefs and you think they're going to romp it, take them both first half and second half. You can get better odds on that. Fancy that, Ben?
Yeah, I do fancy that.
Nice.
I think it's going to be a touchdown win by at least a touchdown.
Do you?
Yeah.
Jeff, what are you saying?
I think it'll be 9 points. I really think it's going to be. You're asking Baltimore to go on the road and play that kind of defense again. That's a tall ask because of, just the diversity of that Kansas City offense. And Mahomes can make plays when it all breaks down that Matt Ryan, that's not his forte. You watch Mahomes last week, he's extending plays and throwing the ball across the field, and the one he hit Kelsey with was like a stupid play. I mean, so in my mind, that's what makes me like the Chiefs here.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going Chiefs across the board. Let's move on to our second game, just while Ben chokes in the corner here. We've got the Indianapolis Colts at the Houston Texans. Big AFC South game. The Colts at 6-6, Ben, they're still kind of in it. But the Houston Texans riding a 9-game winning streak and got to be feeling confident with the Colts coming to them.
Yeah, they're like the quiet guys of the AFC at the moment. No one's talking about them. They've won 9 games in a row. Their defense is looking pretty fierce. Deshaun Watson's playing some football. They've got maybe the best receiver in the league. I think we should probably be talking about them a bit more, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I think so. They've kind of gone under the radar. And Jeff, I've got in my notes here, Bill O'Brien, Coach of the Year, do you think?
I'm not making that one, but I'm going to tell you, because in my mind, the guy that's the Coach of the Year has got to be Pete Carroll in Seattle because of a complete roster overhaul that he went through. You look at that roster, and they just turned it over. The Texans have gotten hot, really hot. And I think the first team ever that start 0-3 and do what they've done. Mm-hmm. But still, they had Deshaun Watson, they had J.J. Watt, they had Winston Merciless, they had Jadeveon Clowney. They have some outstanding players, and like you said, give me that receiver because he to me is the best player in the National Football League at his position. Everybody talks about contested catches, when 2 guys are right there, both of them next to the ball. When he's involved, it's really not a contest because he's going to get the football if it's anywhere near him.
I'd love to see DeAndre Hopkins make a real charge in the playoffs because he's such an exciting player, Ben, and he's one of those players that you look at and you go, you deserve better. You deserve a championship game or an appearance in the Super Bowl. And with the Texans, we haven't seen that so far. To be honest, the AFC South has been so poor in the last 7, 8, 9 years, and now the Texans are starting to threaten to be an AFC contender.
Well, I think Lamar Miller's another guy. I mean, look at that now. He comes over from Miami in a big free agent deal, and he's got 2 runs of over 90 yards in his career. There aren't very many guys that can say that.
Yeah.
He gives them running game. Their offensive line is like a cast of, who are those guys, right? But last week, when you watched them against Cleveland, they ran the ball extremely well against Cleveland. And if you can run the ball as we get towards the playoffs, you got a chance, especially when you can play defense like those Texans can.
And on the other side of that, Ben, the Colts are 2-1 straight up to win this game. Quite long shots. Do you see them having any chance here?
I do. I like the Colts. I think I like what they do on offense. I think what's the coach called again?
Frank Reich.
Frank Reich's had a great season. They look good, but you did make a good point earlier. You showed me the teams they won that streak against, and it's no one of any note. Who are the teams again?
Yeah, where are we?
Dolphins were the best of the bunch.
So the Colts are riding, or they were riding a 5-game winning streak before they got stopped by the Jags 6-0. But in the teams that they beat here are the Bills, the Raiders, the Jags, the Titans, and the Dolphins. So no better than a 6-6 record.
Yeah, so they're 4.5 points underdogs here. So you get them plus 4.5 at 10-11. I don't mind it though. I think they'll stick with them. If you get into a shootout with Watson and Andrew Luck, number one, that'd be great to watch. And number two, I think if it's someone who can stick with him, it'll be Andrew Luck.
That's why I quite fancy the over 49 points at evens here, Jeff. Now, again, we talked about the points and they lower as the season goes on, but I see it being a bit of a shootout. I think the Texans will win, and I quite like Texans -5 at evens, but over 49 total points intrigues me. What do you say?
Well, again, we're talking also about an offense that put 0 points up last year.
Yeah, true.
They have shown that they can, screw it up too.
Yeah.
I like the Texans here. I think they're on a roll. And again, you look at them and you say, okay, when you evaluate a football team, is how good are you at every level on defense? Well, they've got huge playmakers at every level. Tyrann Mathieu in the secondary, Winston Merciless at linebacker, and then both Clowney and J.J. Watt. And I think J.J. Watt, for me, this is a battle of two guys that are fighting out the Comeback Player of the Year award. Luck and J.J. Watt in this game. And I think that the Texans are a better overall football team right now.
Yeah.
I've got here over 27.5 Texans points. That's at evens as well. I quite like that. And the Texans' winning margin, Ben, of 1 to 13 points is 7-5. So
Yeah, I quite like that.
Yeah, fancy that?
Yeah, Colts over 21 at 4-5 I've got as well. I think the Colts will score. I know they had a blowout last week. Big old zip, but I reckon they get 21 points.
And if you want something a little bit more fun, a little bit of an odds boost, we've got the Colts at halftime, Texans at full time. That's at 6-1. So I'm kind of seeing a close early game, but then the Texans riding high and out of there.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah? Good. All right, let's move on to our third game that we're going to preview today. The Los Angeles Rams at the Chicago Bears. That's the Sunday night football, 1:20 a.m. Monday morning here, Ben. I haven't said that in so long. It feels odd. A pair of 2 first-place teams in their respective divisions. Jeff, who do you see coming out on top on this one?
Well, I think the Rams will win. I really do. It's hard to win in Chicago. I know that the Bears are going to get their quarterback. Trubisky will be back for this game. I think that when you look at the Rams and you see just how good Aaron Donald is, he is a hugely disruptive force on defense. They're getting Aqib Talib healthy again. I think the Rams are a better, again, overall football team. And, Gurley is just getting it done from a fantasy standpoint and from a running back standpoint. Goff is growing every game you watch him play. Woods is playing extremely well. Their offensive line is solid. This is a better offensive line than the Bears have dominated against. When you look at those games that the Bears have dominated on defense, typically those are against teams that aren't very good in the offensive line.
Yeah, you mentioned Gurley there. He had 132 yards, Ben, against Detroit. The Bears, on the flip side, are second in rushing defense. So, they've found a system that can stop rushes, but they haven't played Todd Gurley yet.
No, and Todd Gurley doesn't just run it up your throat either. You can give it to him out wide, out in the backfield. You can get him in zone runs as well. It's not just stopping him through the tackles. Rams are only -3 on the spread, which I don't think is enough.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, I think Rams are going to win this game.
How much does weather play a part in this one, though? Because you mentioned it earlier.
Well, it's going to play a part, obviously. stadium that they play in Chicago is right on the lake. So a night game on the lake is going to be cold, and it has the potential to be extremely windy. You know, when you talk to offensive coaches, it's not rain or snow that they worry about. It's wind that affects the game the most because it affects the throwing game. So if it's windy, I think that does play into the Bears' hands. But this Rams team has shown great maturity over the course of the season. They've gone into tough places and won. You know, they've won in Minnesota. They won at places where it's hard to play. And so I think that they understand what's at stake for them. And, you know, again, they're going to be watching. They're going to be scoreboard watching that Chiefs-Ravens game. You can count on it before the game. And then, you know, again, that could play a huge part in this game, because if the Chiefs fall, which they may, and the Rams win, the Rams really take a stranglehold on that first position.
Yeah, Rams are really looking to cement now, aren't they? Cement their place. And the points line this is 52 points. And everyone's saying the Chicago Bears, great defense. If they can put some pressure on Goff, then he might struggle. 52 points is the high line, but the Rams do tend to score 30 points a game. The Bears have been scoring about 20, so it lends itself to over.
I might like the under on that.
I like under as well.
Yeah, because I'm going to tell you something. You know, again, Trubisky's not played in a couple weeks, and so how much rust is he going to have when he goes out there again? And the Rams' defense is getting better each week. If the Rams can force the Bears, when the Bears are good is when they're balanced. And if the Rams can jump in front and force the Bears to have to try and run it to win it, to get into it, it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out.
I want to chuck a couple of stats at you to try and change your mind on. I want to go over because
you want to go over.
Yeah, I want to go over because you look at the Bears. The Bears are scoring an average of 28.7 points a game. That's 5th in the NFL. That's pretty.
That's
tasty.
a lot. I didn't really realize they were doing that.
Yeah, and the Rams are 5-1 on the road as well. So, like we've talked about it before. I know that Chicago's a different beast, but the Rams have proved that they can do it.
Before I would take the over on the Bears, based upon that number, that inflated number, I'd want to see what defenses they put those kind of numbers on. You know, that I think is, really one of those stats you got to look really close at, because again they play in a division where the Lions are kind of up and down on defense, the Packers are struggling on defense, so. Again, strength of schedule has a lot to say in that. Yeah,
the Bears over 26.5 points is 11-10. So if you do fancy the Bears to be putting up some big numbers like me, not like these guys, then that's the one that you go to. All right, our last game that we're going to look at here is Monday Night Football. The Minnesota Vikings at the Seattle Seahawks, 1:15 a.m. Ben, who do you fancy in this one?
I like the Seahawks at home. I really doubt the Seahawks, like we were talking about earlier. They were in transition. They weren't ready for this season. They are here to stay. I think they're going to make. They could. If there's one team you don't want to play in the playoffs who are going to be a wild card team at the moment, I think it's the Seahawks. You don't want to play Russell Wilson. They're going to run it at you all day long. Defense is going to be pretty fierce as well. Bobby Wagner's playing well at the moment. He nearly had a big touchdown
on that
interception. Yeah. Was it on the fumble?
The one he took down the sideline.
98 yards. Yeah.
So they're coming up big now, and I think this is the team you don't want to play, especially at home. Is Seahawks.
I think you are 100% on that, because if you're a football guy, you say, hey, listen, you don't want to play a team that's physical in the playoffs, and that is one thing. You watch them play, and they are physical. Russell Wilson is good enough to extend plays and make plays. They've still got Lockett, right? Mm-hmm. They've still got Doug Baldwin outside. Those guys are proven playmakers. I think this Seattle team is a team that will go into the playoffs as a wild card team, but has a chance to make some noise into the playoffs.
Yeah, well, Tyler Lockett, they mentioned, has 9 touchdowns this season. David Moore has 5 touchdowns as well, so he's been contributing. Let's get some quick fire odds for you now. So the Seahawks minus 3.5 points, Ben, is evens. Over 46.5 total points in this one is 21-20 as well. And over 27 Seahawks points is 8-5.
Yeah, I got Seahawks 1-13 points. The winning points margin at 6-4, which I like. Seahawks over 24. What did you say?
I said Seahawks over 27. Yeah.
Oh, I said over 24 at 10-11.
I'm going a little bit more out there. I'm going for big points. I feel like you guys have got conservative.
I'm actually really surprised against the Vikings defense that you took 20 over on 27.
I feel like the Vikings are a weird team right now. I said this a couple of weeks ago that they appear to be a perfect team almost, and yet they're not quite doing it. Something's not quite clicking for Minnesota.
Well, I think one of the things that will be critical in this game is you saw the comments today by Mike Zimmer about them running the football. And he said, I'm not satisfied. We're not running the ball enough. And so what I hear is that they're going to come out and they're going to run the ball against Seattle. And I think if you look at that, plus Seattle's running the football, that this game will be a lower scoring game than a lot of people think it's going to be.
Yeah. If it goes that way, though, if both teams are going to run the football, then surely my money's on Seahawks. If they're both going to come out running. The only way I see the Vikings winning, they've got to run the ball, obviously, but is if
Give it to
Cousins,
Thielen.
Cousins goes off and Thielen and Diggs go off.
But this, to me, is the kind of game that the Vikings are built to win, because, you know, when you look at the Patriot game, you gotta, if you look at the Vikings defense, where they suspect a little bit, it's their safety's ability to cover, right? They've got great front guys, they got great linebackers. Now, when you expose Harrison Smith and Zendejo to coverage, that's not their favorite. But when you let them drop into the box and be run players, that's when they're really, really good players.
If you fancy this one to be a close game, here's where you make your money. The Vikings halftime,
Yes.
Seahawks full time, 13-2. That's the big money.
I'm on that as well. I like that.
And with that note, I'm going to call it a day there, lads, because there is so much we could talk about, but we've got to be getting out of here, otherwise we get kicked out by the cleaners. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Every time.
It's a pleasure to be here in person, always with you, Ben.
Thank you.
It's
Good to have you back as well.
Always a pleasure. Good luck this weekend if you're having some bets. We hope that some of the tips that we've given you will come off for our sake as well as yours. And we'll be back next week to preview week 15. It really is getting close now, gentlemen. All right, have a good weekend. Good luck to you, and we'll see you next week.